Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are untangling the incredibly complex 2025 cyber threat ecosystem. We're going to be connecting the dots between the hackers infiltrating networks, the defenses we desperately need to stop them, and the absolute crushing legal hammer that falls when those defenses fail.
$10.22 million. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't some theoretical worst-case scenario. This was the average cost of a data breach in the United States between 2024 and 2025, an all-time high. The financial bleed caused by cyber attacks is absolutely staggering, and it's a reality no organization can afford to ignore anymore.
So how do we actually protect ourselves from that kind of loss? Well, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the modern threat actors, then the 2025 threat landscape, dive into penetration testing, check out vital security controls, and wrap up with the legal and financial stakes.
All right, jumping right into part one, the modern threat actors.
To truly understand what we're up against, you have to grasp the sheer scale of the problem. In 2024, organizations faced a mind-numbing 600 million cyber attacks every single day. No, seriously, that is not a typo. It's a relentless, highly automated, and wildly lucrative siege on our global digital infrastructure.
Now, when we talk about the hacker world, it's primarily divided into two main camps. On one side, you have black hat hackers. These are the cyber criminals deploying malware and exploiting systems purely for malicious gain. On the flip side, we have white hat hackers. These are the ethical defenders using the exact same skill sets, but with permission to patch up vulnerabilities way before the criminals can strike.
Of course, it's rarely just black and white, right? The ecosystem is super nuanced. You've got gray hats who operate without permission, but usually to expose a flaw rather than cause harm. Then there are hacktivists who are driven by social or political ideologies. You've got highly sophisticated state-sponsored actors conducting massive espionage campaigns, and right at the bottom tier, script kiddies. Basically amateurs using pre-written tools who, honestly, can still cause massive disruptions.
Which brings us to part two. The 2025 cyber threat landscape. Get this, 60% of all initial intrusions originate from phishing. It turns out that despite all our advanced zero-trust architectures and fancy tech, human error remains the ultimate vulnerability. Adversaries are heavily utilizing phishing-as-a-service platforms to launch these massive, highly convincing campaigns. I mean, they're even faking captcha prompts now, all to trick users into basically handing over the keys to the castle.
Now, breaking down the actual incidents reveals a super fascinating contrast. Almost 77% of the total incident volume is driven by DDoS attacks. This is mostly ideology-driven hacktivists just generating massive noise. But what about that roughly 18% slice for intrusions? Well, that smaller, quieter slice is where the devastating, financially ruining damage actually happens.
And when that quiet intrusion is successful, an overwhelming 83.5% of the deployed malicious code is ransomware. Once an attacker gets inside, this is literally the weapon of choice. They lock systems, steal the data, and extort. It really proves that we're dealing with an incredibly professionalized criminal ecosystem here.
Okay, let's flip the script. Part 3. Proving defenses through penetration testing. So how do you proactively find these flaws before the black hats do? Organizations bring in white hats who follow a really rigorous 5-phase process. First up, reconnaissance, gathering intelligence on the target. Second, scanning for technical weaknesses. Third, exploitation, attempting an ethical breach. Fourth, maintaining access to simulate advanced persistent threats. And finally, reporting, which basically hands you the blueprint to fix all those vulnerabilities.
Now, you might hear the terms pen testing and red teaming thrown around interchangeably, but actually, scratch that, they serve totally different purposes. Pen testing focuses on finding as many specific technical flaws as possible within a set scope. Red teaming, on the other hand, takes a much broader approach. It simulates a full-scale, real-world attack. It tests not just the tech, but the people and the processes to see if the organization can actually detect and respond to a dedicated threat.
Moving right along to part 4, implementing vital security controls. Look, a single firewall simply isn't enough anymore. You absolutely need a layered defense in-depth strategy. We're talking physical controls like biometric locks on server rooms. We're talking digital controls like multi-factor authentication, cybersecurity controls like intrusion prevention systems, and of course, robust cloud security. You blend all these layers together so if one fails, the next one is right there to catch the threat.
The good news? You don't have to invent all this from scratch.
Organizations rely on security control frameworks, like the ones from NIST or the CIS. These are heavily tested, industry-standard methodologies that guide businesses on exactly how to implement and manage their security posture consistently. They're basically the rule books for doing security right.
All right, last but definitely not least, Part 5, the legal and financial stakes.
So, why does all this matter so much at the executive level? Well, because the compliance fallout of a data breach is nothing short of devastating. Under GDPR in Europe, a breach can cost up to 20 million euros, or 4% of global turnover. Under HIPAA in the US healthcare sector, you face massive fines for exposing patient data. And with the new DORA framework for EU financial services, penalties can reach 1% of average daily turnover per day of violation. We're talking about existential financial penalties here.
And honestly, the stakes go even higher, escalating way beyond just corporate fines. With directives like NIS2, executives face personal liability for cyber failures. Under SOX in the US, executives certifying false security reports face up to 20 years in prison. And failing compliance in spaces like FedRAMP, that means total federal market exclusion. Fail to protect data, and you could literally lose your business and potentially your freedom.
So, with threat actors professionalizing at an insane rate and the legal and financial stakes at an all-time high, the big question is this: are you going to apply this structured knowledge to catch the next zero-day threat in time? Or will your organization just become another statistic in next year's report? Take these frameworks, test your defenses, and stay secure out there. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.